Hey, hi everyone. My name is Sahadi Whelan. Thanks Marissa for introing me to everybody. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm one of the owners of Sahadi's. We have 3 locations at a wine shop. So we have one at Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, we have one in Industry City, and we have a kiosk at the Pier 57 in Manhattan, and our wine and spirit shop in Industry City next to our Industry City location. So Sahadi's has been part of the Mediterranean Middle Eastern food world since 1895, when my probably 3 great uncle opened a business in Lower Manhattan in what was considered Little Syria at the time. With my grandfather joined him in 1919, and they broke off into 2 separate small stores about a decade after that. And in 1948, he moved to Brooklyn when the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was causing a lot of upheaval in downtown Brooklyn. So we've been doing this a very long time. We love our customers. We love to cook. We love everything about the food world. So I was brought up in the food world. You know, I've always enjoyed it, and so I want to share it with you. And basically, I wrote the cookbook 3 or 4 years ago because a million customers asked me, what can I do with this? I bought a bottle of pomegranate molasses for a recipe, and now I've got that remaining. What should I do with it? So we based the cookbook on customer questions and just giving information to people so that you're not wasting things and you're enjoying learning the flavor profiles versus the actual just straight out recipes, which I really like. It's part of what I do when I walk the floor. I get a chance to talk to everybody, locals, out-of-towners. We talk about food. I love it. I mean, obviously I've been doing this my whole life and I still enjoy it. So it's all good. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're cooking today and why. Today we're cooking kebabs. It's a ground meat kebab as opposed to a whole muscle meat kebab, because this is a home style recipe. This is the kind of thing that we do at home where you may or might not see it on a restaurant menu. It's definitely something that I would do on it's a little bit hot. I'm in New York. It's a little hot, it's a little muggy. And you know what? I don't want to turn the oven on, so I'm going to do a barbecue thing. It's easy. It uses ground beef or lamb, depending on what you choose. And it's all about the herbs and the spices and just grilling, and it's all about getting people together. I think Lebanese hospitality is a huge part of what we do, whether it's in our cafe, in our wine bar, or in our grocery stores. It's a huge part of what we do, and we love to talk about food and eat and share ideas. And I think that food is the great equalizer. Everybody eats, everybody has cultural recipes, and everybody likes to share food. So it's really nice to be able to do it in a venue like this as opposed to one-on-one in the store where I can't see everybody. It's nice to be able to do it in an environment like this where I can see a lot of people at once. So I guess we'll just get right to it. Today we're gonna do kebabs. We're gonna do ground meat kebabs. You can do these in a lot of different ways. This one I specifically chose because it's a little bit lighter, a little bit spicier. It has a lot of herbs in it. It feels like summer. So it feels like on a hot muggy day, but this is the kind of food we should eat. So I'll talk to you about a little bit about the individual ingredients, and then we'll mix them up, let them chill, and go to the next thing. So here I've got grass-fed beef. It could be lamb, it could be beef, it could be a combination. It doesn't really matter. It's more whatever suits you, whatever you have on hand. This is the kind of dish that I would make when I just had a lot of herbs either in my herb garden or my fridge. It isn't necessarily something that's stuck in stone. You can use different herbs. You can use more of some and less of another. It doesn't really matter that much. It's more just about the fact that you want to lighten the meat up a little bit. So I've got my grass-fed beef, and I'm going to add all the individual ingredients to it before we mix it up and let it rest. Here we're going to use some of my, it's my recipe, so we have a lot of my favorite herbs in it. We have cilantro, which is amazing. It gives a lot of flavor, and it's used very frequently in the Middle East. I love it. I grow it outside. It's really nice. We're going to use...
Christine, have our first question. I'm just going to pop in.
Go for it.
They're asking, what's the best cut of lamb for this? So I guess if you were going to ask for it to be ground, is there a particular part of lamb that is preferred?
That's an interesting question. You know, I live in New York where there's a lot of Middle Eastern butchers. So when you walk in and ask for ground lamb, they just give you ground lamb. They grind it fresh for you. And they only ask you what fat content you want. So basically, you want this to be no more than 20% fat. You want it to be juicy, but you don't want it to be too fatty. So I think if you're going to a butcher, if you're going into a supermarket, you're going to get what you get. But if you're going to a butcher, you want to ask them for no more than 20% fat. So that it's not too, and you don't want it fine. If you're going to a butcher, you don't necessarily want it really, really fine the grounds. You have options. If you are not going to a butcher, it's going to work anyway. You don't have to worry about, it's always going to work. It's just a question of if I was going to a Middle Eastern butcher, I would tell them what I was making. I would tell them I was making kefta, and they would grind it slightly coarser and not too much fat. So that's, you know, that's kind of, but if you're not in a butcher, you can really buy any grass-fed meat from any supermarket that's a solid brand, and it's going to work, and it's still going to be delicious. So you don't have to worry too much about that. Here's parsley. We use parsley in everything. Everybody knows that. I mean, one of the basics of Middle Eastern food is tabbouleh, which is all parsley. So, and I like dill. Dill adds a lot of like herbal and grassy flavors, which I think helps to lighten up a dish. So we're gonna add our dill. Everything is just washed and chopped. It doesn't have to be fine or coarse. I kind of just go in the middle. We do a rough chop, for lack of a better word. We don't worry that much about the individual ingredients. About the individual size. It'll blend into the meat. It's totally fine. This is a very casual dish. This is a household dish. So in a household dish, we don't worry about so much the individual size of things. We just kind of mix it all together. This is a jalapeno. I like a little bit of a spice, and this is just a nice way to get a little bit of a kick. And then we're gonna add our basics. We're gonna add some slightly chopped onions because, although we do the onions a little bit more fine than typical, because we don't want them to be big chunks. We want them to blend into the meat evenly. And then we're gonna add the binders. We're gonna add a little bit of breadcrumb to bind. We're gonna add chopped garlic because everything tastes better with chopped garlic. Let's face it. So we always add chopped garlic in any, it's in so many Middle Eastern recipes that I don't even think about it, I just put garlic in. Sea salt, because you need salt, and sea salt is really good. Paprika, that gives a little bit of color and a little bit of flavor. Black pepper, because it's a basic and you want a little bit of a traditional flavors. And Urfa pepper, which is a pepper from Turkey. It grows, it's a long pepper, it looks like a little baby bell pepper, except it has a lot of ridges. The interesting thing about the Urfa pepper is it dries right on the vine in Turkey. So you basically leave it on the pepper plant until it shrivels up. When I grow them in New York, I grow them on my deck. I can't do that because we don't have enough sun. The sun in New York is not concentrated for a long enough period of time the way it is in Turkey. But when it grows on the vine like that, it dries, and you can see from here, it's a coarse ground. It's dark because that's the way it darkens on the vine. And it adds a little bit of smoke and a little bit of kick, which is great. And then we're gonna add one egg just to bind everything together and make sure it is nice and neat, you know, that holds together nice and evenly. And then what you're gonna do is, like any kind of meatball or whatever, is you're going to mix the meat and the herbs so that they're nice and evenly blended. You wanna make sure that the flavors get right in there, so you have to really get in there and crush the meat. You have to make sure that every bit gets a little bit of herbs, a little bit of onion, a little bit of spices. So you really want to mix it well. You don't want to overmix it, but you want to make sure that it's blended well. What you don't want to do is distribute, you don't want to do is break up any pieces of meat. So you're not necessarily looking to grind it any further, you're just looking to make it nice and even.
This is always something I get nervous about when I make my own patties at home, Christine. Can you describe a little bit more about like what the texture should feel like when you know that you've mixed enough?
Yeah, so when you're looking at the bowl, I don't know if you can, hopefully you can see it from there. You don't want to see big chunks of meat, but you don't want to see, if you're seeing too many things on the outside, that means it's not well distributed on the inside. So what you're trying to do is do a nice blend of inside and outside. You don't want to crush it. It's like when you make meatballs, try to keep them a little bit light. It's the same concept. Basically, this to a Middle Easterner is like a hamburger. It's like how you don't want to overwork a hamburger. We don't eat, well, we do eat hamburgers here, but at home we never eat hamburgers. We eat kefta. Mom made it all the time. If you get the meat slightly leaner, it's also really fabulous at room temperature. So on a hot day, we used to take it to the beach with us when we were kids because that's what my mother did. She made kefta and we had it at the beach. And so you see, if you can see now, it's well distributed, but it's not mold. I didn't continue to knead it like a bread dough. I just want it to be evenly distributed and not to have a lot of herbs around the sides of the bowl, because that means that they didn't make it into the bowl, obviously. So
right. And it looks like you're doing some kind of twisting motion, kind of.
Yes, because I want to evenly distribute it, but I don't want to mash it. Like if I go down there with my fist, I'm going to mash it. So I'm looking to just mix it lightly to make sure that there's herbs throughout. So if I pick up any of this meat, if I break it at any point, you don't see any place that doesn't have something.
Right.
Some meat, some herbs, there's a lot going on here, and you want a lot going on here. You want it to look like that. Any extra liquid will be absorbed by the breadcrumb, which is why we put a little bit of breadcrumb, because I put a lot of herbs, and herbs have water, and I wanted to make sure that it would bind. And now we're going to rest it in the fridge a little bit so that we can allow it to absorb and get a little bit thicker so it doesn't fall off the skewer when we skewer them. So give me 1 second, I'm gonna wash out my hands, and then we're gonna put that in the fridge, and we'll start on the next dish while that's resting. Okay, we're gonna go to, next thing we're gonna make is a deconstructed Greek salad. I love deconstructed salads. I love when people can just pick what they want and they don't feel like, well, I chose it, so that therefore they have to eat it. So I often will do a deconstructed salad where somebody can choose, well, maybe they don't eat olives, or maybe they don't eat something else on the dish. They can enjoy it their way. All right. Meat is rested, and we're gonna go to the Greek salad. Let's put everything out of the way.
Christine, before we leave the kebabs, can you describe sort of the different kinds of kebabs? And, ground versus chunks and etc.
Absolutely. So ground kebabs are more of a household thing. It's more what you make for your family. It's what, like I said, it's what you make when you take it to the beach. Whereas if I'm making filet mignon kebabs, it's a dinner. Like, it's going to be a much more formal dinner. It's going to have, have whatever sides. It's not going to be as casual a meal. For family, ground kebabs are any day dish. You're not going out and buying a special cut of meat. You don't have to butcher the chicken. You just buy ground meat at any butcher and you make kebabs. Whereas the other kind of kebabs, chicken or shrimp or sausage, or like merguez style, are all more formal. Those are things that we put on like a mixed grill. So you only see kefta kebabs. You've only seen them on the menu in the last 5 years in the more casual cafes. The more formal, the more likely you are to have a filet mignon kebab. There's a great space for both of them in dinners, but kefta kebabs, like ground meat kebabs, are more of a memory thing. They're more of something that we always ate growing up, and we didn't eat a lot of hamburgers, so that's the replacement, so to speak, for that kind of a thing. I mean, my mom would serve them with hummus and pita bread, or with tzatziki and pita bread, and that's the kind of thing that we ate at home. So I think that you often see, the kind of kebabs you often see in restaurants are more formal. They're more meant to be a more expensive dinner entree rather than just a ground meat, a ground meat dish. But I personally prefer to mix lamb and beef. I like them a little, I like lamb. Most Middle Easterners like lamb, and I really like it. So sometimes I'll use a mix of half and half. It depends on what I have. But if you do them with a little bit of lamb, you'll find the flavor is a little bit more gamey. It's a little bit more Middle Eastern, as opposed to straight out beef, which tastes traditional. It still will have the seasoning, but it will taste traditional. I use individual spices. You can also buy kebab mixes, which would be slightly different. But I use individual spices because that's what I have. And when I cook a home style dish, I tend to use the ingredients that I have on hand. Whereas when I cook a more formal dish, I'll go out and get ingredients for that dish. So I always have these 4 or 5 spices that I put in here. I always have garlic, I always have the paprika, I always have, Urfa pepper, so I put those in. But you could also use a prepared spice or a kefta mix and skip all of that. I mean, we sell them, there are plenty of them. I just use, like I said, what I had on hand because I wanted this to be more of a family style put together weeknight dish.
Yeah, when you were talking about what your mom would make for you, it sounded like that's sort of like her weeknight go-to.
Yeah, we had it all the time. And we went to the beach in the summers, and she would bring it to the beach because, some people bring fried chicken, some people bring sandwiches. My mother would bring kefta. That's just what we ate at the beach. So it wasn't like, it's not unusual for me because if you use fairly lean meat, you can eat it cold and it tastes delicious and it's not fatty at all. So, we had a cabana, but my mom always we had kefta at least once a week at the beach when I was growing up. So I thought it'd be kind of fun.
Tell us what else your mom would bring to the beach, because I want to know.
Middle Eastern cheese, olives, pita bread, hummus. She'd bring stuff, American food too, but most of the time that's what we ate at the beach. Like my mother was not the fried chicken on the beach kind of lady. She'd bring sandwich stuff also. But she would always bring, at least my dad came in a few nights a week, and she would always bring something that could be heated in the toaster oven for dad, or something that could be eaten at room temperature, and kefta inevitably was a dish because my father loves it and still does. We put it on the menu at Industry City because my dad loves it so much. So it's funny, people are like, why'd you put kefta on the menu finally? Like, because dad liked it. But it's a dish, it's close to my heart, so I really wanted to make it for you guys because I thought it'd be fun to talk about and to put together.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, we've got another question. Will Aleppo pepper be too different a taste?
No, Aleppo pepper would be similar. It'll be a little less spicy, it'll be a little less smoky, it'll be a little bit more bright, for lack of a better word. It's not as a deeply flavored pepper. It's more of a brighter flavor, but they both work. We use whatever we have. It would be either, but you could use either one absolutely interchangeably.
Okay, I think we're ready to get to the salad.
Okay, so let's slide the frame over. So this is what we're going to use for the salad. The salad, like I said, I like to do it kind of as a deconstructed salad. So everybody can choose what they like, because when you chop together a Greek salad, you're kind of married to taking a bite of each thing when you do it. Not everybody likes to do that, and this is kind of more, once again, more casual. So we're going to start. I'm just going to put a little bit of lettuce. It could be romaine, it could be anything, whatever you have. I just had romaine, so that's what we used. But you can use any kind of lettuce. It's just basically to give you a little bit of a base. I like to just put the tomatoes on the vine right on top. So we're just going to go with, some of these fell off. That's okay, we're going to throw them right on top. Once again, this is a very casual dish, and it doesn't really matter if you don't have tomatoes on the vine. You don't need to use tomatoes on the vine. If you have pear-shaped baby tomatoes, you can use those. It's more just enjoying the freshness of the vegetables, with the tartness of the olives. So we're going to put some feta. We're going to get my cutting board. We're going to slice some feta. I like to use a barrel-aged Greek feta. I know I can be a little bit of a feta snob, so I'm going to flat out say that's true. I like my feta to be sharp. I like it to be at least partially either sheep or goat. I don't like it to be cut too small, so that's why I'm only leaving it in these nice big shapes, because I feel like people can break it up as they wish. You can use more feta, you can use less feta. The idea is that it doesn't really matter, you're just kind of throwing it together. And then of course you always have to have your garnishes. So, because I'm Middle Eastern, cucumbers are an essential in every dish. So we always have Persian cucumbers in every dish. And lemon, because it's nice and bright. And of course olives, but like not everybody in my family eats olives. Like my son does not eat olives. I know it's very disturbing. It's actually disturbing to me too, but it's okay. So because of that, we do constructed Greeks that we don't have to worry about that. So I'm gonna put the olives on the side. Let's see. I did put some dried oregano because I think dried oregano is really good in this. But I also did pick some fresh oregano out of my yard because I think it's really pretty. And it brightens up the dish a little once again. And here's our Aleppo pepper. We talked about it and it's here. I use Aleppo pepper on almost everything. So you can always see the sprinkle of red. All through the cup you can see the sprinkle of red on almost everything. That's because I use Aleppo pepper constantly. And then,
Christine, can you talk about barrel-aged feta? Because that's something I had zero, I'm a big foodie too, and I had zero idea what barrel-aged feta was until you.
yeah, absolutely. Barrel-aged feta is one of my favorites. It's a little bit difficult to work with because the barrels are like 100 pounds, and you have to break it out with an axe. And we always did it when we were growing up. My dad always bought barrel-aged feta, and we axed out the top of the wood and sold it out of the barrel. Thank God it's gotten a lot easier now. Now they barrel age it and then they put it in plastic barrels. So it's manageable for us. It's a lot easier to use. It's aged in the barrel, so you're getting, and it's usually a sheep and a goat. Occasionally there's some cow, but it's never straight out cow. Only American feta is straight out cow. The others are always either a blend or individual sheep or goat. So they taste a little bit more gamey. They taste the cheese tastes, you definitely taste the barrel in the cheese, without a doubt. Today's feta is a little less salty, so years ago you had to soak it out a little bit because feta was so salty. Today's feta, even the barrel aged, is not so salty anymore, which is lovely because you can really enjoy, because when you soak feta, you also soak out flavor as well as salt. So we really prefer when you don't have to do that. But yeah, it's delicious, it's firm. I particularly like Greek. I mean, a lot of countries make feta. Bulgaria makes feta, US makes feta, France makes feta, Hungary makes feta, and I've had fetas from all over the world. I particularly like Greek because it's firm, but yet still super flavorful. Some of them are softer, but they're really gamey. Some of them are firmer. Greek kind of straddles the middle. It's neat to put out in a salad. It's easy to cut. It lasts forever if you cover it with brine. And it's my favorite. But the age, you don't realize how much flavor that barrel aged adds to a feta until you have it. There's a huge difference between a barrel aged and a not barrel aged. Even though you might not notice it on the first bite in your mouth, you will notice it after you eat it. It has a much longer, nuanced flavor, which is great, which I love. So.
And these are oak barrels, or what kind of barrels do we know?
I don't know. They could be oak. All I know is they're tremendous. And when we first opened Industry City, we decided to go back to the barrel age. And the first barrel they sent us leaked everywhere, all over the barrel, all over the store, all over the refrigerator. It was horrible. And we were like, okay, we really want this feta because we know it's the best quality on the market, but we can't work with this barrel. And then we found somebody that was taking them out of the barrels and putting them in plastic containers. And it was so much more manageable, and we never turned back. That's what we use. So, I mean, the traditional, if you go into just a straight out very Greek store, you usually will still see them in the barrels, and they actually have refrigerators that are meant to hold those barrels. So the fridge will hold 3 different barrels, and you'll have an extra aged. I don't have all of that, but we always have a barrel aged now in our cheese departments and all the Emerald stores, and it definitely adds a tremendous amount of flavor. Once they seal them in the plastic, I feel like you're not losing any of that flavor based on having had the barrels very recently. I feel like it's a manageable, it's a good in between because it's easy, much easier to work with. And I mean, when you chop out the top of an oak barrel or whatever kind of barrel it is, pieces of wood go everywhere, so it's not so easy to work with. I mean, you really have to be very cautious. I mean, people are eating it. So I'm really happy to have settled on a great product that comes in a manageable, it still comes in a 55-pound barrel, but at least it's plastic, so I don't have to worry about shards or mess, you know, and you don't have to worry about any kind of air leaking in because, of course, the barrel is sealed.
Right. Okay, let's get a closer look at this salad.
Okay, so now, of course, we're always going to put a little bit of parsley because we like parsley, and then I'm going to drizzle it with olive oil, and then if you want, that's what the lemon's there for. I'm using a Lebanese oil. I'm partial to Lebanese oil. I'm sure you can see why. It's a thick oil and it's a very flavorful oil. So I like to make sure that we're getting that the oil adds to the dish and it's not just a fat on top of the dish. I always use a good quality olive oil because it makes a huge difference in a final dish. You don't have to use an expensive oil, but you have to use something that's a good quality. And Lebanese oil is one of the more inexpensive countries to bring oil from. And their quality, it's a very thick oil. Like they don't even make filtered oil; they only make unfiltered. So I always use that. But so there is the salad. The salad is all ready to go, and then we always add a few extra lemon wedges in case somebody wants a tartness that was not added. Brought more additional. So there it is. People can choose what they want. Everybody can get, everybody gets the flavor profile they want, and are good to go. All right, so we're gonna go back to the kebabs because we have to skewer them and get them ready to go on the grill. So we're going to talk a little bit about the skewers. There's a lot of different types of skewers that you can use to make kebabs. I chose to use a flat skewer because a flat skewer is a much easier type of skewer to flip. What happens is because it's ground meat, it just tends to spin around on the skewer. And we didn't want that to happen, so I used a flat skewer. You could certainly use a wood skewer as long as you soak it. Comes out just the same. At the store we use wood skewers, but we're more careful about turning them to make sure that we get even browning on both sides. So you just have to pay a little bit more attention if you don't have a flat skewer, but it doesn't make a difference in the end quality. It's just a question of actually, spinning it and making it functionally easy to do. These kebabs are going to be fairly large. You could certainly make them smaller. There's 100 choices. I just opted to make 4-ounce skewers, which is like a full meal basically. So I'm going to first break the meat into 4 balls about the same size. At the store, we of course weigh them to make sure they're the same size, but here I don't. Obviously it's my house, it doesn't matter. I just try to make sure it looks like they're about right.
Christine, we have a question about the resting of the meat mixture.
Yes.
Can you let that rest overnight in the fridge if you're prepping ahead, or will that change the texture?
You can not only let it rest overnight in the fridge, you can freeze them raw, which is what my mother used to do. She, instead of getting her hands messy and doing this, she would make kebabs for 3 weeks and put them, and then you can cook them frozen. You just have to be careful about making sure they cook to the temp you want them to cook, because the interior, of course, is going to take a little longer to cook. But we always did them frozen when we were growing up because Mom was like, and she had a lot of people to feed, so it was just easier to do them that way. So it's a time saver if you want to do that. So you're going to take the meat and now you're going to work it, but once again, you're not going to mush it around into a ball. You're just going to form it gently between your palms until you get to a kebab shape. So it takes 2 sacks. As you can see, my
You
skewer.
make that look so easy, though. You have to do the second one slower.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, you know what, I'm used to doing a lot of kebabs at once. See, the skewer is completely flat, so it just makes it a little bit easier, but like I said, it's not gonna change, it doesn't make a difference. When we do them at home, because we make a lot of them, it's easier to have the longer skewer that we can just grab off with this towel. So let's go to the second one. This one we'll do a little bit slower. So basically, you're gonna put it in between your palms, and then you're gonna squish down, and you're gonna gently rotate it so that each time you're squeezing, the meat is growing a little bit longer.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, you're just gonna make sure that they're right, and you're gonna push in the ends a little bit because you want it to be as even as possible so that they cook evenly. I mean, I personally like my meat rare, so it doesn't bother me if the kebab's not cooked all the way through. My brother gets twitchy when his meat's not fully cooked. So because of that, it's easy. If they're all uniform, you just pull some off early, you pull some off later, and it's really super easy to do. See, and you want to make sure, see how it's smooth? It's, and it's, I mean, you could wear gloves, but it's way easier to feel the meat if you're not, especially if you're in your kitchen and your sink is like two steps away. See how it's nice and even? You can see the herbs are going through evenly. You don't see any flecks of spices, which means it's well blended. And I tapered it, the ends are tapered a little bit, but I did press them in to make sure that I'm gonna get even cooking. But you do have to be careful of, if you notice, you can see the onion, the store prepped this out for me so that it would be easy, but everything was chopped evenly. So that, at home it really wouldn't make that much of a difference, but they did prep it like that so that it would be, so that you wouldn't get big giant chunks of onion, so that it would just be kind of part of the dish. I mean, like I said, you definitely could have made these smaller, but I feel like this is a dinner entree, it's one per person, so you're gonna get like 3 ounces or 4 ounces of cooked meat because you have to factor in the herbs and the veggies. But it only takes 2 seconds to make. It's like meatballs, it's not difficult. Then again, you don't want to overwork your meatballs either, so I think it's about the same concept.
Would you say the onions are small dice?
Yes, the onions are small. They can be large, and if I'm in a rush, my onions are definitely not as even. I'm not even gonna pretend. It can be, it's not gonna taste any different. It's just that texturally, it's nice if it's in kind of an even texture. But it doesn't,
Right.
it's not gonna change the final dish. And like I said,
There's a question too, if you can use dried onion instead of fresh. So I'm also wondering, I mean, maybe granulate or, onion powder maybe.
I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could use any of that. I don't use a lot of onion or garlic powder because I like the texture of the raw one. But nothing is set in stone with kebabs. You can always adjust. I mean, that's the nice thing about kebabs is it should be what you want it to be, not what necessarily what I want it to be. Like, maybe you don't like jalapeños, don't put them. Maybe you don't like dill, but you want to put tarragon. All good. Like kebabs are extremely fluid. You can do whatever works for you in terms of. I mean, you could put raw peppers. I know people that put diced red pepper, small diced red pepper in their kebabs. I don't, but that's just more the function of. But if I didn't have any onion, might I put? Yeah, I probably would put a little onion powder. I might go in my fridge and find a pepper. I think you can put